going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of Best Bets and Props, where I go over all of my bets placed for this weekend's card. It's UFC Vegas 64, Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Lemos at women's 115. 12 fights on this card at this point. We do have 6 bets placed on my end. I've got 4 money lines and 2 props, but I will give out some additional plays that I do like at the very end that I did not get to. I'm going to breeze through some of these picks, so check out my full card breakdown that I put out on Monday for any detailed, reasoning behind these fighters this weekend. And also hit the like, hit the subscribe. Check out BetUS Sportsbook, who I'm partnered with. In the description, you can find either a link to the page or the promo code Addicted2Combat125, which you could use. And it's a 125% deposit match on the sportsbook, which is up to $2,500 deposit. I think minimum is $100. And they do have competitive lines on all sports, but mixed martial arts, even for a small UFC fight card like this one on Saturday, they've got a lot of high-value payout props for like combined method and round props. Not a lot of bookies do have that for these smaller non-pay-per-view cards, so check that out and use that promo code, and you'll get that sportsbook match. So let's get into the money lines. I do have Mario Batista as my first money line. I didn't even expect to beat the line movement this much. I got Batista over the weekend at minus 235. I put 2.35 units on him to win 1. And if I would have known I was beating the line movement like this, I would have put more money on him. He's taking on Benito Lopez. And Lopez, you haven't seen him in a while. It's been over 3 years. It's been since July of 2019 since we've seen Lopez in the octagon. And the guy was not really that well tested before he made his departure due to injury. I think some lifestyle and career changes as well. But I remember there were some injuries that were spoken about during his time off. So I don't know what the condition of Benito Lopez is coming into this fight. But since his layoff, Mario Batista has fought 5 times, winning by decision, knockout, and submission. So Batista's going to be primed and improved to win this fight in a number of ways. He's a very explosive striker, but has shown that he has the patience and the technique to go 3 rounds and win clinch positions, employ takedowns of his own, employ some takedown defense, and just look pretty good with his striking counters as well. So Benito Lopez, his finishing potential has historically been in round 1. So after that point, I'm pretty sure Batista can take over this fight. So I expect Batista to win this fight inside the distance. He's currently sitting around minus 300. I do like him as a parlay piece. Moving on to an underdog, I did take the shot on Mark O. Madsen versus Grant Dawson this week. Mark Madsen reached around that threshold I wanted. He climbed up over the week up to plus 195, and I had to put 1 unit on him. I've never seen Grant Dawson win a fight without using his wrestling, and Mark Madsen is an Olympic silver medalist in Greco-Roman wrestling. I know that doesn't always translate to mixed martial arts in the cage, but so far he's been doing just fine with it. Both of these guys have shown that they do have some issues later in the fight at a certain point. I feel like I've seen Mark Madsen really shore that up in his last couple of fights and actually win round 3 in both of those fights. His pace and pressure is solid. His, takedown offense is really what he's going for, but he does have effective striking. Very basic on the feet. He does throw a strong overhand, that he leads with a jab for Mark Madsen. Grant Dawson probably has a few more weapons on the feet, but he relentlessly goes for takedowns without really setting them up. So Grant Dawson can look desperate at times, doesn't always conserve his energy, in rounds 1 and rounds 2 to last in round 3. So he's been 10-8'd in round 3 before his Grant Dawson, but he also has a couple round 3 finishes. So I'm kind of torn on that. But for plus 195 odds, I feel like there is some value on Mark Madsen here. Even though he is 10 years older in this matchup, he seems to be pretty primed and not regressing too much in his age here. So give me Mark Madsen to, really eliminate one of the main weapons in Grant Dawson's game, which is that wrestling. I think Mark Madsen will neutralize it and probably end up in top position for a large majority of this fight, winning a decision. So up next, we do have a very, very good veteran at Neil Magny at minus 115 odds. I took Neil Magny at 2 units to beat Daniel Rodriguez. And these guys were supposed to fight a few weeks back. Daniel Rodriguez had a staph infection, I believe it was, so the match has been postponed a few weeks. And Daniel Rodriguez is coming off of a very close split decision win over Li Jingliang at UFC 279, a match that a lot of people thought that he lost, myself included, but it was very close. I'm going to give, of course, the close-up boxing and the just overall fight-ending power I'll give to Daniel Rodriguez. I'll give Daniel Rodriguez even the durability, never having been finished Neil Magny has been finished in many of his losses, but Magny is a guy where unless you've got like some really smothering top pressure or a heavy wrestling and grappling approach, Neil Magny probably beats you. And unless you put Neil Magny out, he'll probably beat you. You know, he's 16-2 in decisions. He's been in the UFC for forever, going 19-8 in the organization since I think like 2013. So Neil Magny. And oddly enough, he's the same age as Daniel Rodriguez. They're both 35. So Magny's also the taller man by a couple inches, and he's got a half a foot of reach, and 80 inches of reach at welterweight is insane. I just expect more output from Neil Magny. I expect him to eventually, just add up strikes on the board, especially in round 1, and then later in rounds 2 and rounds 3. Once the power threat is gone from D-Rod, I expect Neil Magny to close the distance, work the dirty boxing against the cage in the clinch position, maybe look for some takedowns and back control as well, which he tends to do off of the clinch. So give me Magny. I think he's got more weapons, and he's faced fighters like D-Rod before and not had too much trouble. That was 2 units at -115. And finally, the main event, I do have Marina Rodriguez, 3 units at -205 on the money line for Marina Rodriguez. I think you can currently still find that price on her as well. I think at worst, she's about -220, the favorite, over Amanda Lemos. And it makes a lot of sense for me at women's strawweight. You've got Marina Rodriguez, who's got way more refined technical striking, but more importantly, it's later in the fight it remains. You know, she's been in 2 5-round fights, has Rodriguez. Lemos has never been past round 3, and most of Lemos' finishing potential is under 1.5 rounds. She's very good with her early power, very powerful hooks. She's got a nice front kick that she lands to the face as well. We saw her drop Angela Hill with that. And for Amanda Lemos, that's one of her better wins is against Angela Hill, and that was a close split decision win as well. Since then, she has lost to Jessica Andrade by submission, and she also did beat over the summer Michelle Waterson, who both women here have a win over. So again, I think Lemos is technical enough early in the fight, but by the end of round 2, round 3, she starts to fall apart technically and get really desperate. You can see her cardio fall apart and her striking defense as well. So I see Rodriguez really accelerating into this fight, and she could even have the potential to end this fight in rounds 4, rounds 5, where Lemos has never been before. So give me Rodriguez ultimately by decision. I do have a few units on her, as I mentioned, at -205. Going into a couple props I do have Miranda Maverick, who's the biggest favorite on the card. Inside the distance for Maverick at +125, I think is a pretty good way to transform the -650 price tag on Miranda Maverick over Shayna Young. And interestingly enough, this is a woman that Miranda Maverick has beaten before by round 1 submission a few years back in Invicta. So did I mention I do have 1.5 units at +125 on this prop? You could go, +200 or so on Maverick by submission, I've seen, which, again, she's done this exactly before to the same opponent. But Shayna Young has fallen victim to ground and pound in the past as well in the UFC. So I don't want to leave out that possibility that Miranda Maverick could just, get elbows or punches from the top position. I rate Maverick's ground game as her best weapon in this fight. Striking-wise, Shayna Young has actually got some good weapons. That lead leg sidekick to maintain distance. She is the bigger woman here by quite a bit, but Maverick is improving. Her striking is night and day improved since the first time these two women fought in Invicta. There's still some improvements to be made for Maverick on the feet, but I think it's enough to set up the takedown threat and end this fight inside the distance. I also have a violent spot here on Derek Minner versus Shailan Nordenbeck. 2 grapplers that have high finishing potential. 87%, I believe, of Derek Minner's fights have ended inside the distance. 75% of Shailan Nordenbeck's fights have ended inside the distance. These guys combine for 51 finishes amongst them, and they're not that old of guys. Shailan is 28 years old. Derek Minner only 32, and this is at featherweight. So to get 1.5 units, I put at -130 odds for this to go under 2.5. Derek Minner has a huge amount of round 1 finishes. He's pretty much, round 1 guillotine or bust, round 1 submission or bust. The guy is very slick at, sinking in the choke, defending the takedown, which Shailan, usually attempts. With that guillotine could be a path to victory for Derek Minner. I think he's a live underdog this weekend, but he's got to get it done early. After that, he falls apart. Doesn't really have much will to continue fighting, and I think Shailan Nordenbeck will eventually get that round 2, either submission or TKO. But if not, this just doesn't have to see halfway through round 3, and we get this cash bet at minus 130. I do like it. I think Norden Beck has got very powerful striking on the feet, in pretty much all rounds of this fight. But he's going to try to take this to the mat and wear down Derek Minner. So he'll be a danger of the threat of the submission of Derek Minner, and also in position to get a finish of his own. So give me that violence prop. I think the math spells itself there. As far as some recommended violence spots here, so those are all of my bets. Some recommended ones I do like, the minus 165 for the under 2.5 in Chase Sherman, Josh Parisian. I mean, these two guys are big, sloppy heavyweights that don't seem to conserve much cardio, and they have very poor cardio as it is. So for this fight not to see halfway through round 3 for the two big boys, Chase Sherman and Josh Parisian, I think minus 165 is actually kind of a steal for that one. We talked about the Benito Lopez, Mario Batista fight that I like. Under 2.5 at plus 110. You're getting kind of a discount on this line because even though Mario Batista has finished 70% of his fights here, Benito Lopez doesn't have a record of getting finished. He's got a very good record, and I don't know if this guy's I think he's been finished one time, right? His one loss to Manny Bermudez by guillotine. That's his only loss. So, again, Lopez is coming off of this 40-month, layoff. Don't know how he is physically with his condition of his injuries. So I expect this to actually finish inside the distance for Benito Lopez. To get plus money on that, you're covering the for Batista to get the finish here. You're getting the insurance on that under 2.5 at plus money of Lopez finishing this fight in round 1, which is generally how the guy finishes his fights. He's got, we're looking at like 6 round 1 finishes for Benito Lopez. So if he can come in here and look, just like he was in 2019, very fast early in the fight, you can cash that bet as well. I did mention the violence spot for Marina Rodriguez in the main event. Winning in 4-5 or decision for Marina Rodriguez. You can get anywhere between plus 100 and plus 110 on that. So I think she wins by decision, Marina Rodriguez, but she could be dangerous with her pace and pressure and striking in rounds 4 and 5, where she's proven to be effective, and Amanda Lemos has never been to those championship rounds before. I think that's a pretty good combined round prop there with the decision. An underdog I like on this bout as well that I have not hit, Jinyu Fry. She's pushing plus 121, plus 125 I've seen on some books, over somebody who's never won a decision, and that is Polyana Viana. So even though Polyana Viana is the younger woman by 7 years at this weight class 115, she is round 1 or bust as far as her submission goes so far. So Jinyu Fry has been submitted before, but she has way more experience. She's faced this submission threat even in her last fight against Vanessa Demopoulos and done well, getting the decision. I rate the striking of Jinyu Fry much better than that of Viana, and she's won a lot of decisions before. So give me Jinyu Fry at, that plus 120, plus 125 spot. I wouldn't hate anybody taking a stab on that underdog. I think she does win this fight, and that's a pretty good value you're getting there. And, if there was a parlay itch I had to scratch this week, it would be taking Miranda Maverick at the current odds, Bautista at the current odds, and Marina Rodriguez. If you take all their current odds and parlay those three together, plus 123 for a parlay, that's not that bad of a combined, odds there. So it's getting plus 123 on two people I think are really going to win, Maverick and Bautista, and then top that off with Marina Rodriguez, who I think has all the skills to win, and now you've got this whole travel situation with Amanda Lemos just making it yesterday to Las Vegas, and she's got to now cut weight, make the scales, and then make it to the Octagon on Saturday after only having been in the country for a couple of days. All that adds to a confidence on Marina Rodriguez. So Maverick, Bautista, Rodriguez, plus 123 combined odds at the current market. So if you had to scratch the parlay itch this week, that would be the way I would do it. I'm going to stay safe this week. It's kind of a sketchier card, but all right, you guys, that's all of my betting action. Leave a comment below on some of your, potential plays or your better props this week. I'd love to hear it. Any way to make money on this card? I think there are some good spots here for it being a less entertainment value card before the big pay-per-view UFC 281 next week. Let's enjoy this one, make some money. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys next time for the recap. Cheers.